the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners, as well as listeners in Eugene, Oregon, as well as listeners on YouTube. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. Today is May 9th, 2018, and you are listening to the Age of Fission radio show, where we discuss all things nuclear, none of them good, on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. You're going to get me on Wednesday and Thursday, and Lonnie Clark on Monday and Tuesday, and then we do a combined show on Fridays, which is always exciting and fun to listen to. So, without further ado, I just want to talk about, well, first of all, I want to talk about something that kind of struck me today for the first time. And that is, and I've hear it over and over and over again. You know, every story of every nuclear disaster or facility or anything, you always hear about, well, the workers this and the workers that, and the workers, the nuclear workers, that amorphous sort of semi-invisible underworld of some very smart people, in a very secretive society, so to speak, where you don't talk about what you do. Your job is your job, just like that one woman that I did a simulcast of her interview, and she worked at Rocky Flats, and she was like, nobody knew what anybody else did out there. You went out there, you did your job, you didn't talk about your job, you didn't discuss your job with your coworkers even. It was just something you didn't do. So these workers, and they're all what you would call good Americans, they're all people who really believed in their heart they were doing the right thing. I am unsure as to how creating nuclear weapons is doing the right thing in anybody's mind. But I guess it is. I guess that they're sort of like, well, they are what they are, and if they're going to make them, I might as well try to help make them good. That's the attitude of your typical nuclear worker. I was reading today about this uranium hexafluoride processing facility in Paducah, Kentucky. And it's called the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant. and they take uranium and they turn it into uranium hexafluoride gas, which they sell, and then they can turn that into fuel. Yellow cake uranium, I believe. I'm not sure how the process really works there, but they basically they made fuel for power plants is what they did there, and a lot of the workers got really sick over the years, and they were talking about back in the 50s and 60s, there was uranium dust everywhere. It was just everywhere. And you'd have gas escapes and stuff, and the management would be like, oh, don't worry about it. This is as long as you wash your hands. Okay, this is what the management of the Paducah plant told this worker. And the guy, he was an older fellow, and he's like, yeah, they told you that you pull your hands out and you put them in the alpha mitts, and if they tested positive, then they said make sure you wash your hands good with soap and water and you'll be fine. For a while, they actually stopped providing coveralls for the workers at the plant, which caused the workers to become obviously contaminated with uranium dust, which they ended up taking home, as well as the other chemicals that they used in the process of gasification and extraction and purification. So there's high radioactive dust everywhere, and these guys were literally taking it home, and their wives were throwing it in the machine with their kids' clothes. And a lot of them got cancer and weird diseases, and a lot of them didn't live as long as the others in their communities. This one guy, the story of this one guy, he started working out at the plant, and within like 6 to 8 months, he started losing weight, and then he couldn't eat anymore, and then they had to remove like 2/3 of his stomach. The whole time, the managers at the plant are saying, "Oh, you're fine. It couldn't be this. This is safe. Just make sure you wash your hands with soap and water." And eventually, he got too sick to work. And they let him go. But he wanted compensation for his thing. And he ended up dying of cancer. He suffered away. He had bones growing through his skin, fingernail things growing through his skin. He was having literal genetic mutations from working out there, whatever job he did. And they denied it. I think they ended up paying his widow at the end $6,000. That's the typical plight of your typical nuclear worker in the United States of America. I did a little search for the nuclear worker cancer, and there is a strong correlation between people who work at nuclear facilities, and that includes power plants, by the way, not just production facilities, where there's an average of between 20 and 50% increase in certain cancers. Colorectal cancers are big in that. As well, cancers of the throat, larynx, increased heart disease. Their average, the Paducah plant, for instance, the average age of the worker, expected life expectancy of the average worker there was 8 to 10 years less than of the other people who lived in their communities. The workers really are taking the brunt of it, and I think that us activists, I don't know how we can approach this, but people need to quit working with this stuff. Number one, they need to understand what they're dealing with. Number two, after they quit working with it, but if you got to work with it, at least understand what you're dealing with. And the fact that our government, over the generations, through all the people that were adults when I was a little kid, basically, back in the 60s, 70s, 50s. Those people got really badly poisoned and contaminated and weren't told that it was dangerous. And that's sad. And they brought it home. They brought it into the communities with them. I mean, those poor guys in Paducah, Kentucky, they, oh no, you got to buy your own overalls now. What kind of a company would do that? You know, I came to a conclusion about nuclear, and I think I know one thing that would stop it, and that is this, and that is if the government took complete control of everything, okay, in a verifiable way. All these contractors who are running, and that when I do my searches, I'm looking for facilities and issues, it's always private company, this nuclear and that, this, and wow, all these different companies that are subcontracting, and they're lazy, and they're just out to make a check. You know, and I think that's the bottom line. The bottom line is it's run by people who are just out to make a check. Okay, now if you take those people out of the equation, you'll have to grow the size of, boom, right away, you're going to have to grow the size of government just to compensate for the loss of all those companies at all those sites and all those power plants and everything. You know, take the private sector completely out of the equation and then let the U.S. taxpayer take on that burden. Okay. And it's like, well, we're going to have to actually raise taxes by 15% across the board because, but we can't afford nuclear power. It's too expensive. Or raise your utility bill, double it, you know, take your choice. Is it going to be higher taxes or a doubled utility bill? Sorry, the government can't afford this. We can't print any more money there. We are broke. And the American people will go, you what? Oh, no, you didn't. All of a sudden it becomes real. All of a sudden it becomes something that we can see and feel, our pocketbook. You know, if we were the ones responsible financially for all of this, instead of the government in a backwards way, which is what they're doing through these contractors, you know, they're just paying a check to a contractor. We don't, you know, it's so easy for them to hide billions of dollars in this whole process through the contractors. And so I feel like the government and the contractors are in cahoots and they're poisoning us, the workers first. You know, just about every nuclear worker has a story about some disease or something, you know, ooh, well, it's not that bad. I mean, a lot of them are so patriotic that you can give them cancer. You know, that one woman that I interviewed, I mentioned her a few minutes ago, worked at Rocky Flats at the foundry for like 12 years. She stood in front of a glove box at the foundry with her arms through alpha mitts, and since she was a woman and was a little shorter, she had to mash right up against the glass window to be able to reach in and work with the plutonium discs that she was working with. She ended up getting a massive breast cancer and had both of her breasts removed as a result of that. And after her chemo, after all of that, she went back there and stuck her hands back through those holes in the glove boxes and went back to work. That is the mindset of your typical nuclear worker. It's like, this has to be done and somebody's got to do it, and I guess it's going to be me. Plus the money was good, and there you go. And then she said, plus, where else am I going to be able to make that kind of money? I had a whole lifestyle now dependent on this level of money. You know, they pay some of the nuclear workers good. You know, when they're not doing filthy cleanup projects where they bring in prisoners, they pay them pretty well. Some of those nuclear people. Your typical nuclear plant employee probably doesn't make less than $35, $40 a year. You know, if you're working on site in the plant, you have the clearance to do that. You would need a minimum of a Bachelor of Sciences degree, I would think. But I don't know for sure. But not too many idiotic people are running around in nuclear power facilities. I hope. I get disappointed a lot that way, though. So we're basically poisoning a percentage of our population. People who are indeed assets on a balance sheet. People who don't really have a voice because they've been taken from them by propaganda and by lies and by posturing. Posturing. That's what the whole nuclear thing is about. In the beginning, it's about posturing. Oh no, we're never going to use them. We hope we never have to use them, but boy, we're ready. We're ready to incinerate the whole surface of the earth 4 times over. What's the point? That is the point. Is there is no point, and this is the ultimate folly of humanity. This is the ultimate ignorance and stupidity and selfishness. And we are being tricked into thinking it's in the name of safety. And they're tying it in with country and government and God and religion. It's all a big thing that's way bigger than us and beyond us and out of our hands. It's out of our hands. And in some ways, maybe it is. We can only catch up when they let us know. When they finally release the information, then they can catch up. Like the JFK files, for instance, are sort of along that same mindset. They're gonna now delay that again, so we won't know the real story of what happened there until 100 years after the incident occurred. The United States government is withholding that information from the people of the United States for 100 years in order to protect itself or certain people who may indeed still be alive. And that's the same way with the nuclear. There's some horrible things. The show I did a couple of weeks ago regarding the human experimentation that the government has done on the people and probably continues to do. They're probably done with the nuclear stuff because they're more or less like, well, okay, we understand that, the ramifications of that. I hope that they're able to get through it. So then you look around, you go, okay, we've got hundreds all across the planet of old General Electric and Toshiba boiling water reactors. They're big, massive things. They are in so many ways unhealthy and filthy. As I just mentioned, the people who work around these plants will get cancer. That is just part of the deal. You're going to get cancer if you were, or some sort of health problem, even if that be a lower life expectancy because you get heart disease or whatever later on, afterwards. People die early because they work around this stuff. It does destroy your body. And you can start with them as the epicenter and work out percentage-wise from there on a bit distance basis, basically on a the farther you get from the plant, the less cancer you're going to get from it. But you will get consistent cancer from this technology. And, and what can we do? The government knows that too, and they're aware that if we get maybe even just one major nuclear meltdown on the North American continent, that'll be it. That'll be it. People will rise up. Let's say that pick one of the tens that we have in the United States. Any one of them. I don't care which one it is. Pick one and say, okay, this is going to melt down. We're going to have a release, aka Fukushima hydrogen explosion. and people downwind, and we're going to have exclusion zones. You know, people are going to lose their lives, their health, their property, their animals. What do you think the people of the United States will say to that? What do you think that they will? Do you think that they'll be like, well, okay, I guess that's an acceptable sacrifice. You know, we lost an entire small town, and you know, 10,000 people are permanently homeless, many of them families, and now they're dependent on the government. And people are going to run, or won't allow that to continue. They won't. They'll be like, okay, we need to shut all these down, and they'll rise up against it. And the government knows this, okay? This is my theory, all right? So what I see is, okay, we have to figure out a way to make this in a sneakier way so that it can't blow up in a mega way anymore. Small releases are okay. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. But we don't want any mega releases. We can't have any mega releases. And so what they're doing is they're creating small modular reactors now. Okay, the new thing, you know, with the old style General Electric and Toshiba reactors, or with the conventional fuel assemblies and all that, they're using what they call slow or thermal neutron capture, where the neutrons have to go fairly slow to be able to hit a fissionable atom of uranium-235 and create a chain reaction. You've got to literally put things in the way of these neutrons and make them go through things before they interact with the uranium, or they'll just go right by. You know, and there's a very thin window, you know, and the rest of the neutrons just go right through, right out into the water and disintegrate or lose their energy in the water around the core. So that's why they have to put what they call oh my God, my brain just went blank. A moderator. They call them a neutron moderator, meaning they slow down the neutrons to the speed necessary to create fission in uranium-235. So that is in some ways inefficient, because the chain reaction can run out of control if you don't very cleverly control your neutron moderation, and because you moderate them, but then you need control rods as well to stop them if the thing gets out of control. And the hotter it gets, it doesn't matter with that. All right, it'll continue to fission even at high molten temperatures. So what they're doing now is they are doing a reactor. It's a fast thermal, or it's not thermal, it's a fast neutron reactor. And what this reactor does is it uses a high energy neutron, and by using plutonium instead of uranium, or a mix of plutonium and uranium, i.e. MOX fuel, but you have to pack it with a higher density, okay? So the trick is in regular reactor fuel, it's like, I think 8 to 14% of the fuel is fissionable material, but with this fast neutron capture, you need like 40%. So the fuel itself has to be much richer, a higher percentage of plutonium and other fissionable things, so that these fast neutrons, as they fly through there, will have a higher percentage chance of hitting an atom and fissioning it, you know, or creating plutonium out of it and then fissioning it. You know, so that's where they're going. And one of the benefits of this is it is dependent on temperature. It's very, very sensitive to temperature, a fast neutron design is, because once the material heats up, the atoms within the material get to moving so much that the neutrons just lose the ability to interact at all with them. It becomes a hot mess, and then the reaction stops. So the hotter it gets, the less it can react. So there you go. That stops the possibility of an overwhelming chain reaction. So that's one big problem. And these, as well, the smaller reactors have a smaller core in them, fewer number of fuel elements. Different kind of fuel, though. It's mostly plutonium. And it's, like I said, a higher concentration as well of fissionable material in the fuel. The only thing that, and I did go to the NRC's website, I found a list, I'm looking for it, a list of new reactors. That's what they call it. Let's see, NRC site. Too many tabs open. There we go, NRC. I guess I need to go back. So here we go. Nuclear reactors, research and tests, new reactors. Yes, advanced reactors. So their advanced reactors are actually, they're starting to use molten salt, and they're thinking about a thorium fuel cycle. Here we go. Here is a list of the reactors that they are now, at this moment, trying to get licensing for. This is what the direction that we're going. Okay. We have the Oklo Incorporated Compact Fast Reactor is what they're calling that. Okay, then we got, and then do you see this Incorporated? Oklo Incorporated? Who owns that nuclear technology? Who is this Oklo company? Next one is the Transatomic Power Corporation, and they are trying to license a molten salt reactor. Now that molten salt reactors are interesting, wherein they use a molten salt solution to create reactivity, and you can actually feed plutonium to these things. You can feed spent fuel to these things, right, just as it is, and they will integrate it and use it. Molten salt, and again, there's a big melt plug, and so if the reaction gets out of control, the melt plug goes and the whole thing dumps, and as soon as the temperature gets too cold, it won't react. So I think the molten salt reactor is a slow neutron or a thermal neutron capture reactor. But it actually has the ability, if you work with it, to destroy plutonium, and break it down, and then you end up with a block of salt, a big giant block of salt versus some kind of liquids or other things, and you could just grind up fuel rods right into the salt bath, and it will just, it'll eat plutonium, literally consume it. So that's actually, it's all bad. It's all bad, but that one has the ability to actually even use a little bit of our waste. And then we have X Energy LLC. This is a modular high-temperature gas-cooled reactor. Okay, that's what I was just talking about. That high-energy neutron type. Okay, it's a high-temperature gas-cooled, so they're using gases to cool the core. But can keep in mind that with fast neutron capture, once the core gets to a certain temperature, the neutron, it's like a curve, and the higher the temperature goes, the lower the reactivity of the fuel, until it basically just quits reacting. Hopefully before it melts. I'm sure that it probably does. But then again, you have decay heat. Decay heat is the big boogeyman of the nuclear world. They've shut them right down, but no, you still have decay going on for quite a while. So that's what we're looking at. Another 1, 2, 3, 4 molten salt reactors, 1 compact fast reactor, and 1 modular high temperature reactor. And those are both, the compact fast and the high temperature are both fast neutron reactors. And the molten salt reactors are slow, and there's 4 of those. So I think that's good. We don't see any boiling water reactors on the horizon. That's not what they're trying to do anymore. And thank God for that. You know, we can't be having them do that sort of thing. We need to decommission and get rid of every single one of our boiling water type reactors. We don't need the plutonium anymore. But now if we're going to start using a fast neutron reactor, now all of a sudden we do need plutonium. See, and therein is a problem. But I think it's safe to say that we've got tons and tons and tons of plutonium, and all of the spent fuel from all of the power plants all over the United States. They're all loaded. Every spent fuel pool is loaded with plutonium. You know, it's loaded. You know, that's how they make the stuff. You know, when you bombard uranium, some of it becomes plutonium. So I'm looking out the window here real quick, and it's a beautiful morning, and I'm looking at a couple bubbly clouds, and then boom, right behind that, this big, giant, thick contrail. Huge. And it will become a cloud, you know. So there's that too. So at any rate, you know, I feel like this is the direction we're going. Now, how do we feel about that, folks? How do we feel about small reactors? Okay, and one of the tricks about these little small reactors is they're portable. Okay, they build them on site at a plant. They fuel them on site at the plant, and they deliver them by train or truck, fully ready to go. All you got to do is pick the thing up and plug it in and fire up the spark plug, because it is a fast type reactor. And that's what those compact ones are. That's what they're talking about. Those are little. You know, they'll take 8 or 9 of those, and they'll stick 8 or 9 of them in a single big containment. You know, so look up modular small reactor. You know, look that up and see what you see. You're basically looking at a reactor in a big giant can. You know, they put like 3/4 of it submerged underground. And a lot of them, what they want to do is to put them in a pool of water, the whole thing. And then they can have 8 or 10 of them in a big pool of water running in a big containment facility. And those 8 or 10 can produce, each one produces about 500 megawatts. So, you know, I've done a YouTube video, and I've actually published a video of them firing up a reactor to 500 megawatts. And it gets pretty bright. It's amazing. You know, nuclear fire is blue. Yeah, that's basically been the thing. Is if you're working with nuclear material and you see a blue flash somewhere, you know you just got zapped. You know, that's how it works. God, I wish we would have never come up with this, folks. I really do. I wish there was some way to just take back time and take back the health of us and our good American citizens, all the workers, you know, that have gone in to put their life and blood and families' health into this. You know, my own health as a child. I remember moving to the Colorado Plateau from, I think I was living in D.C. as a child, and then right after that we moved to the Colorado Plateau, and immediately I started having behavioral issues as a child. As soon as we got to the Colorado Plateau, it took about 2 months. And I remember tasting this metallic, metally, I don't know what to call it, taste in the air, and which is one of the first things you're supposed to be able to taste when you've got radio contamination, nuclear contamination in your body. That's one of the first signs, is metallic taste in the mouth. It's either that or lead, I guess, because they used leaded gasoline back then. Every car used leaded gasoline. But I do remember that the skies were not cloudy all day. That you could stand at Colfax and Colorado Boulevard in Denver, Colorado, and look west towards the mountains. And that was sort of up on a hill, and you could see the entire Front Range of the Rocky Mountains as clear as day all the way across. Okay, it wasn't hazy at all. It wasn't overly polluted at all. So I don't know. Is the behavioral thing connected to that metal taste? Is it? I don't know. Is my life now very different than it could have been as a result of that? I don't know. Could that have led to some of my own personal demons that I fight to this very day? I don't know. I think maybe. I really do. So I don't know for how many more generations we think we can continue to do this. The technology changes and advances and develops and becomes safer, but there's a bottom line. Okay, and the bottom line is that you need to create fuel in the first place for these things, and 2, you need to dispose of the spent fuel that these things leave behind, and the whole processing cycle of doing that is filthy and creates a huge waste stream, and there's nothing we can do with the waste stream. So we have a giant, hideous waste stream, and we're not really even looking at how to take care of that. There's literally, I don't know, I think maybe in what is it, Sweden or Switzerland, they have under a mountain granite thing where they just put, like totally tectonically safe, stick it down there and cap it off for, a million years, bury it over and humanity will forget it was ever there, and the granite will absorb the neutrons or whatever, and it'll eventually become something else. But, we have no way to take care of all this. What are we going to leave these fuel bundles sitting in dry casks at San Onofre for the next 10,000 years? Next 100 years? Think what's going to happen to those half-inch stainless steel casks that have a life expectancy of 20 years in 100 years. Those same stainless steel casks that we can't even get close to, let alone inspect and pull out and check. We can't. As well, keep in mind that there were issues, and quite a few ruptured fuel elements. Bent, ruptured, damaged fuel elements, which means that all of the isotopes that were locked away inside those elements, such as cesium and strontium and iodine, are all now loose. And those things get out. They just have this weird ability to get out. I saw this crazy guy on YouTube that had a video, and he took some cesium. It was not radioactive, but he experimented with this cesium, and I was amazed. Cesium explodes in air. It literally explodes. It oxidizes so quickly. It's stunning how quickly it oxidizes. It does not want to be itself. It wants to be volatile in the air or in the water, I imagine. This guy basically he bought a vial of it and tried to open the stuff and pour it into diesel and a little teeny bit of it splashed back up out of the diesel and caught fire in the air, and then caught the diesel on fire, and the whole thing then just went off, and very nasty metal. Okay, I'm sure strontium isn't much better. So those things get out. They get out of those dry casks. 10 years later, 5 years later, what's going to happen in 100 years? Are we going to have a solution? Let's say we do in the next 10 years. And even though that's literally impossible, come up with a long-term repository for all of our spent nuclear fuel, just the fuel from power plants, which is a sizable amount of stuff. What do we, in the next 10 years, that all the casks at San Onofre are going to be over their design age. None of them at this point are even movable. That's what blows my mind, is they stack them and they put them in these overpacks, and they don't have the ability to move the overpack. If something were to happen, it's like you got a week or 2 weeks to get that stuff 10 miles inland, or something's gonna happen and it's gonna get washed out to the ocean. They would just have to leave it sitting there because they couldn't get close enough to it to pull it out of there. So what are we gonna do with all this stuff, folks? And every new reactor design, every new innovation is going to create a new innovation and a new type of fuel and a new type of technology, which will just add to the waste stream, and it will add to the production stream on both ends. And who's going to get sick first? The poor people who are building this stuff, manufacturing it, and working with it. People that work at the plants and that work around this equipment and work in the factories that are building modular reactors. It won't be built on site and inspectable. It'll be built in a factory somewhere in a tightly controlled, they'll have their trade secrets, and so it'll be nobody can come in because this is trade secrets. It's ugly because we, the people, we don't know what goes into one of these things. And how well is one of these little high-tech reactors? Okay, their whole thing is saying, well, it's going to be safe because if it gets too hot, right, then the reaction shuts down. And yeah, that is true. However, that doesn't stop decay heat from happening, and decay heat is high. And if you don't have an effective cooling system, they're like, well, it uses, what do they call it? Convection cooling. So it uses convection to kind of cool it down just naturally. It doesn't need pumps. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting. What happens if you lose power, for instance, to one of those things? It may use convection, but I'll guarantee you the convection is operated on a computer-controlled setup that carefully monitors temperatures, pressures, opens and closes valves here or there, uses batteries at the minimum to open and close valves and to regulate pressures, and probably has automatic shutdown systems in the event that it's not able to determine what's going on, which what would happen if your sensors don't work because you don't have any power. That was part of the big thing at not only 3 Mile Island, but Chernobyl and Fukushima as well, was the operators just didn't know what was going on. At Fukushima, it was like, boom, all your gauges are suddenly just off. You know that you have a scrammed reactor on the other side of that wall. You know that there's tons of decay heat. You can't tell if the pumps are running. You can't tell how hot it is. I think that has got to be the most horrifying thing of all for a worker to have to face that. Now what do? You don't even think about your own personal safety, even though the smartest thing to do would be to run in the other direction. But no, they'll stick around. They'll try to work through it. Getting car batteries and hooking car batteries to the equipment just to get a reading, just to see what was going on, because we don't know what the temperatures are. We don't know what the water levels are. We hope that these automatic systems function. They didn't. They're automatic systems based on lower than industrial grade airlines to actuate valves. And it was valves there again. See, it was valves. It was little stupid things. Well, this valve won't open. Well, why not? Because there's an airline going to it that broke in the earthquake. Well, what do we need to do? Well, we can hook an air compressor. Well, we don't have any power. Oh. So what do? You send a guy up there? Well, it's like pretty radioactive. Well, I guess we had no choice. And so some poor Joe, hello worker, come here and kill yourself. And so they go up there and they open the valve manually and get radiated in the process. Of course, nobody ever hears about that. They're just a hero now. And then that still doesn't work because they don't know what's going on. And so that's your issue. Your issue is not, you can't call it, there's no such thing as a safe nuclear power plant. I don't care how big or small it is. There's no such thing. It's not a safe process. It is not. It's not the sort of a process that you can go, well, that was safe and clean. It's not safe. It's not clean. It's not tidy. It's filthy. It's disgusting. It's deadly. In so many other things, we would not tolerate this. Seems to be one area that John Q. Public globally is either ignorant of or in denial about, or something. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but then again, if that's what I got to do, then that's what I got to do. I'll preach away. I will continue to preach to the choir. There may be a new ear here or there. It may make a difference. And let's say it doesn't. Let's say that between the chemtrails and the nuclear waste and the global warming and all this human wrought disaster that we are bringing upon ourselves, in 10 years, I think Guy McPherson says less than 10 years, we're gone. There's cataclysmic events that occur and humanity is gone for the most part from the planet. The Earth doesn't care. George Carlin did a very interesting piece on environmentalism. And he points out in this piece that the Earth really doesn't care. The Earth is what it is. We're the ones, that are jacking it up. People running along with the plastic water bottle, drinking filtered water out of a plastic water bottle, thinking that's environmentally healthy somehow. I don't know. But basically, and he talks about plastic, we got to save the whales and save the this and save the that. And it's like the Earth doesn't care about any of that. Life will go on or it won't. It's the conditions are there. And I think that, let's say that Guy McPherson's right, and we do finish ourselves off. And most of the life on Earth. Let's say we have a full-blown nuclear war, and it kills us off, and nature and everything else. Things will grow back. It will grow back. Just like George Carlin was saying that plastic, the same in the last 10,000 years. Well, maybe that's why the Earth evolved us, is because it needed plastic. And so now it has a new paradigm, the Earth plus plastic. That's silly, I know. But still, we need to get a little more thoughtful about how we're doing things here. Let's see. Here, Paducah, Kentucky. Plant contamination. Plant operations have contaminated the site over time. The primary contamination of concern is trichloroethylene, which is commonly used degreaser at the site. Trichloroethylene leaked and contaminated groundwater on and off-site. The groundwater is also contaminated with trace amounts of technetium-99, a radioactive fission product. Other site contaminants include polychlorinated biphenyls. Through normal operation, portions of the plant, primarily process equipment, are contaminated with uranium. In 1988, TCE and trace amounts of technetium-99 were found in the drinking water wells of residents located near the plant in McCracken County, Kentucky. Wonder how long they drink that water for. What do you think? So to protect the human health, the Department of Energy provided city water at no costs. Yeah, there's no chance the city water could be contaminated, right? So here it is. In the 1980s, the family of former employee Joe Harding brought a lawsuit related to the medical conditions that they believed he incurred from having worked at the plant. His wife, Clara Harding, this is the lady that I was talking about, eventually settled the suit for $12,000. In 1998, a lawsuit was brought by employees of the plant against Lockheed Martin. There's another one of the operators of the Paducah plant. God, we need to get rid of the contractors. We need to get rid of the contractors. We need to take the whole thing, eminent domain, whatever you want to call it. We the people need to take control of this stuff. We need a nuclear regulatory agency which actually looks out for the health and welfare of the citizens instead of the health and the welfare of the corporations. Okay, like Lockheed Martin. How many today have we talked about? How many different private corporations run our nuclear business in this world? Is the whole thing private? Is it just a big private thing and it's just a usurping government? Could it be that this is really the oligarchy's big ploy? To let us think that it's just government. That's what we think. We think nuclear and we think government. We don't think nuclear and Martin Marietta, okay? We don't think nuclear and General Electric. All right, but General Electric's biggest profits come from their nuclear industry links. General Electric has caused a huge amount of contamination on this planet. They should be held accountable for the reactors going bad in Fukushima, in my opinion. And every GE boiling water reactor in the world should be shut down. Same with Toshiba boiling water reactors. If it uses thermal neutron capture, it should be shut down. If you have to boil water to make steam in a pressurized containment, it should be shut down. They should literally all be shut down, but those ones need to be shut down first. All the plants that have been running since, God, here's a good example. Dresden, it's called the Dresden Generating Station. It's the first privately financed nuclear power plant built in the United States, activated in 1960 and retired in 1978. Operating since 70 are the Dresden Units 2 and 3, 2 GE boiling water 3 water reactors. It's located in Grundy County, Illinois, at the head of the Illinois River near Morris, Illinois. Northeast of the Morris operation, the only de facto high-level radioactive waste storage site in the United States. It produces 867 megawatts of electricity from each of its 2 reactors. Activity between the 70s and 96, it was fined $1.6 million for 25 incidents. On May 15, 1996, Lowering water levels around the nuclear fuel in Unit 3's core prompted a shutdown. And they got placed on the NRC's watch list, which merits closer scrutinies by regulators. Dresden was on the NRC's watch list 6 out of 9 years between 87 and 96, longer than any of the 70 other operating plants in the nation. In 2011, they declared an alert on July 15th after a chemical leak of sodium hypochlorite restricted access to vital areas that house plant cooling water pumps. Oh, God. So, and here's the ownership. Both currently operating units are owned by the Exelon Corporation. See? And so what it is our whole nuclear industry is owned, lock, stock, and barrel by the oligarchy. And they're the ones that are making the decisions. And we're just being tricked into thinking the government controls it, but I don't think they really do. I think they only act as a moderating influence to try to keep them from out and out poisoning us. You know, you want your sheeple to be healthy so that they can work hard for you, including in your plants where you know they're going to die from it. But you know what? What is the word that comes to mind? Acceptable risk. Yeah, this is an acceptable risk. Yeah, that's what it is. So, do you really believe that? That there is anything, such thing as like an acceptable risk when you're dealing with the livelihoods of people? I don't think there is. I don't think so. I think that we are living in a period where we are, as Lonnie would say, assets on a balance sheet. We have lost our humanity. We have had it taken from us. And I guess that if we want to take it back, then that's up to us, isn't it? It really is up to us. So my name is Jerome, and I call myself the Sane Environmentalist. I have a YouTube channel. So you can get me at YouTube, look for the Sane Environmentalist. And I want to give a shout out to Ms. Lonnie Clark, who without her constant efforts, this show would not be possible. I also want to give a shout out to our local Fort Collins radio station who simulcasts our show, and that is Peaceworks Radio, WPRK, I think, I don't remember, but I'll figure that out. It's right on the tip of my tongue, one of those things. But basically, if you look up Eugene Peaceworks Radio, you'll find them. You can simulcast them. They're a good organization, very good organization. So, at any rate, folks, I hope you have a good day, and look forward tomorrow to talking about more things nuclear. And hopefully, nothing bad happens overnight. Looks like I can never get this right. I can literally never get this right. It's like, come on, man. So yeah, I
Truth on the Tracks.